When Bitcoin drops 40% in a month, you find out what you actually believe. Not what you say at parties, not what you post online, what you do with your money when the headlines say it's over and the people who told you it was a scam are texting you again. I've been on both sides of that moment. I've sold when I should have held. I've sat on the sidelines when I should have acted. And 2,000 years ago, a man named James described exactly what was happening to me. He wasn't talking about Bitcoin, he was talking about faith. But that gap between what we say we believe and what we actually do about it, that's universal. James had a word for faith that doesn't act. He calls it dead. This isn't me pointing a finger at anyone. This is my story. And if you see yourself someone in it, good. That's the point. James chapter 2. If you've never read it carefully, now's the time. Verse 14. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith, but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? He's not being rhetorical. He wants an answer. Verse 17. In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Not weak, not immature, dead. And then he goes further. Verse 19. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. The demons know exactly who God is, and it doesn't change a thing about how they live. James gives two examples later in the chapter. Two people from completely opposite ends of society who proved their faith by what they did. We'll get to them. Now, Christians have debated what James means here for years. And I'm not going to settle that debate in a YouTube video. But whatever your theology, his point about the gap between saying and doing is hard to argue with. I didn't find this passage in a sermon. I found it in a bear market. Every Bitcoin cycle has a wilderness. It's the stretch where the price is falling and nobody can tell you when it stops. Where the YouTube channels that were calling for $1 million go quiet. Where the gold bugs are back on television telling everyone it's going to zero. Where your coworkers stop asking about your portfolio. It's not dramatic, it's slow. That's what makes it hard. You check the price less, you stop reading the articles, you tell yourself you're being patient, but really, you're just not looking. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice starts asking, what if I was wrong? That's the wilderness. And the wilderness is where faith is actually measured, because nobody's watching, nobody's clapping, and the only person who knows whether you hold or sell is you. I've been in that wilderness more than once. The first time, I didn't make it through. I sold. The second time, I didn't even show up. I believed, but I sat on the sidelines and watched. Let me start from the beginning. 2010. I'm a computer scientist and someone tells me about this thing called Bitcoin. Digital money, no bank, no government, just math. My first reaction? The cryptography has to be breakable. There has to be a flaw in the math. There always is. So I did what any engineer would do. I started writing software to try to find it. I spent years looking for the weakness in the code, the crack in the foundation. I couldn't find one. So in 2013, I bought my first Bitcoin, about $300. And immediately, I thought I'd overpaid. I told myself I'd wait for $100 and buy more. That $100 never came. I held for a while. The price climbed. And when it hit around $2,000, I sold. I thought I was a genius. For about a month. Because Bitcoin didn't stop at 2,000. It kept going, all the way to 20,000. And I watched the whole thing from the sidelines, holding cash instead of Bitcoin, telling myself I'd get back in when the price came down. And if you're sitting there thinking, that would never happen to me, it could. And when it does, you might not want to get back in because the price is higher than where you sold. I started buying again at 20,000. I've bought above 100,000. Waiting didn't make it cheaper. It rarely does. And with an asset that trends upward over time, buying what feels like the top over and over again isn't the problem you think it is. Around that same time, my career shifted. I started managing programs for encryption devices approved by the NSA. I was working with military-grade cryptography every day, and for the first time, I was seeing Bitcoin's cryptographic foundations through the eyes of someone who understood what secure actually means at that level. It was rock solid, not a toy, not a gamble, engineered to last. And my faith grew, but I still didn't act, not the way I should have. I kept waiting for the perfect entry point, the perfect dip, the right moment. Every week I'd check the price and think, not yet, next month, after the pullback. I had conviction. I could have explained Bitcoin to anyone who asked, but my wallet didn't match my words, and the longer I waited, the harder it got. Because every day that passed, the price was a reminder that I was standing still while my own conviction was telling me to move. That's the gap James is talking about. I had faith, but my faith had no works. And then, finally, I stopped waiting. Not because the price was perfect, because I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. The conviction outgrew the hesitation. Every year since, my faith has grown. Not because the price went up, because the understanding deepened. And the action reinforced the belief. That's what James means when he says faith and actions work together. Your faith is made complete by what you do. James doesn't leave this as an abstraction. He gives two examples, and they're not the two you'd expect. The first is Abraham. James 2, verse 21. Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? God told Abraham to take his only son up a mountain and sacrifice him. Abraham didn't understand the plan. He didn't get an explanation. He climbed the mountain with the knife. Genesis 22, the whole chapter is one long act of faith, step by step, uphill, with no guarantee of how it ends. And God provided. Verse 22, you see that his faith and his actions were working together. His faith was made complete by what he did. That's the whole relationship right there. The second example is Rahab. Verse 25, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? Rahab was a Canaanite, an outsider. She had no covenant with God, no standing, no reason to be in this story. But when the Israelite spies showed up at her door, she got one chance to act, and she took it. She hid them. She risked everything. Joshua chapter 2. James picks these two on purpose, the father of the faith and the woman on the city wall, the ultimate insider and the ultimate outsider. And he measures them the same way, by what they did when the moment came. Bitcoin's earliest adopters were an unlikely mix of their own. Cypherpunks and sinners, outsiders and iconoclasts, people the financial establishment would never have invited to the table. But they acted when they had the chance. Hebrews 11, the Bible's Hall of Fame for faith, independently lists them both, Abraham and Rahab side by side. The bookends of what it looks like when faith moves your feet. There's always a moment when believing crosses into action. If you're a Christian, you know those moments. There's a point where what you believe starts showing up in what you do, and the people around you can see it. For Bitcoin, that moment is the first purchase. Not the research, not the podcasts, not nodding along when someone explains it to you at dinner. The moment you open an exchange, move your money, and buy. I told you about my $300 buy and my $2,000 sell. The first time I crossed that line, I retreated. The second time, I stayed. Not because the price was right, because the conviction outgrew the excuses. That's what James is describing, the moment your conviction becomes visible. I'm not comparing Bitcoin to God. But the human pattern James describes, the gaps between what you say you believe and what you actually do, that shows up everywhere in life. James just had the nerve to call it what it is. James isn't describing mountaintop faith, not for most of this passage. He's describing something quieter, the kind of faith nobody sees. Nobody makes a YouTube video about buying a small amount of Bitcoin every week. Nobody throws a party because you didn't panic sell during a 30% dip. Nobody sends you a congratulations card for keeping your conviction when the market went dark and everyone else moved on. But that's exactly the kind of faith James is talking about. The unglamorous kind. The week after week kind. The kind where your actions line up with your words and nobody's watching. James 2:26. As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. That's the whole book of James in one sentence. And one more verse from Paul this time. Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Don't grow weary. Don't give up. The harvest comes to those who keep showing up. This is the first video in a playlist called Faith and the Faithful Hodler. 12 videos about patience, conviction, and the long game. If this one resonated, there's more coming. Next time, Caesar Augustus ordered every person in the Roman Empire to be counted, recorded, and registered in their city of origin. A massive empire-wide record, and God used it to fulfill prophecy. We'll look at what ancient record-keeping and modern blockchains have in common. I'm Patrick, and this is the Gospel of Bitcoin.